All right, this is Kirby. So with Kirby's hair, she had a little bit of a grown out bob, something that we had done previously on her. What we're looking to do is more of a crop with a little bit of length kept out around the front. So jumping right in, I've sectioned off from the crown to the front hairline directly in the center, and then from the crown to the mastoid process on each side. So really just sectioning off the front from the back. Gonna work a rounded line that follows the shape of the head, and then as we work down, we're gonna kind of pivot and slightly raise our elevation to create a little bit more length around the front. So you can see I'm just elevating, bringing everything straight out from the head, and just cutting along the shape of the head. Work back a little bit, elevate the hair, and just keep my fingers flat to the head shape. And I really only cut to my second knuckle. And what that'll do is just allow me to have the most amount of control in keeping the length consistent when working on a rounded shape. So working front to back, bringing the hair straight out from the head, and cutting that rounded line. So that's section 1. So section 2 will pivot off of section 1. We'll use section 1 as the guide, and we'll do the same thing. So you can see my grooming is really clean. So elevate the hair, not really over directing section 2 into section 1, but just lifting the hair straight up using 1 as the guide. Same process, just making sure that I'm keeping everything consistent, working my way backwards from the front hairline. Section 3, same thing, pivots off that back part. Just kind of separating it there so I'm not having too much in my hands. Elevating the hair straight out from its base. And then just following my guideline as I work into the back. All right, now as we work down around the round of the head, what we'll do is we're continuing to pivot. So the first section past the round of the head will kind of start to flatten out a little bit. So instead of following the head shape, you'll see I move my body position and I'm going to start from the back and work my way forward. So I'm using that length from the previous section as a guide, but instead of rounding and following the shape of the head, I just keep my fingers flat to the floor. And what it does is it starts to add a little bit of length to that perimeter. So I'm elevating the hair and over directing it slightly forward so it's getting longer, but then my cutting line also changes here. So these are little slight differences in the technique that will allow us to do something that's a bit more creative. You can see I'm just kind of showing the over direction. Everything's getting pushed forward and elevated up. So I'm bringing that whole section all the way forward and lifting it up, cutting along that guideline. The elevation and the over direction work to preserve the length around the front of the ear. Same thing on the opposite side. So my body position goes back to where I'm cutting from the hairline to the back. The reason for this is it just makes more sense for my body to work this way. It's easier to follow the shape of the head if I can keep my fingers pointed forward here and work its way backwards. So section 2 on this side, using section 1 as the guide, just pulling the hair straight out from where it lives using the previous section. and working my way backwards to the division point. Just kind of cleaning up any little excess hairs that I might have missed. So we kind of skipped ahead here. So now we're past the round of the head, so you can see I switched my body position again. Now the reason I do this is it's easier to work short to long. So because I'm keeping my fingers flat to the floor and preserving that length, my body position also had to change. But the technique is the same. I'm still pulling everything up and forward, keeping my fingers flat to the floor, flat to the shape of the head, allowing that length to get longer as it goes forward and towards the bottom. So there you can really see the over direction. Elevating everything up. Keeping the technique nice and strong. Just making sure that I didn't miss any hairs there. And that's the whole front. So once I comb it down, you can really see the length is preserved, but the top is very cropped down, very short. So as I work in through the back, kind of the same thing. Take a middle section and we're going to follow the shape of the head. What we're doing a little bit different here is that we're going to leave out the perimeter at the bottom. We're going to leave that for more of a refinement technique. So I'm just using a little bit of the length from the top as my guide, and I'm going to kind of cut up into that just to make sure that it all connects. Once I reach the occipital bone, I kind of stop cutting, so I just cut this little bit here and then leave the length at the bottom. I want to preserve that length so that way when I do my refinement and my outline that I've got more hair to create something that's a bit more graphic and strong. Section 2, going to get elevated straight out from the head. Just using the previous section as a guide, going to start from the bottom and work my way up to the top now. So now that I have my guide, I don't have to start from the bottom and work down. So section 3, same thing. Just going to elevate the hair straight out, not using a ton of over direction at this point. Just making sure that I'm not cutting anything below the occipital bone, keeping that length through the bottom, working my way up, following the shape of the head. So once I've worked around and I get to the corner, the over direction gets a lot stronger. So I'm pulling everything back to connect with the flat of the head, but still working my way up around the shape of the head. What that does just preserves a little bit of length behind the ear because the hairline jumps. So I wanted it to stay consistent and strong through the perimeter. Same thing on side 2. Section 2, using section 1 as the guide. Bringing it straight out from the head. Here you can see we're on the outside corner, pulling everything straight backwards, using the previous as a guide. Still letting that perimeter line drop out, so that way we can save it for the refinement. Just kind of combing everything down into place, visually checking it, seeing if I like the kind of fuzziness of it. So for the blow dry, going with a flat wrap technique. Just keeping the hair really flat to the head, not wanting a lot of lift. With the hair being so short, I think it's important that we use a lot of control. I dressed it with a smoothing solution. just to help knock any of the fuzziness down and keep it nice and smooth. The hair is pretty short, so I wouldn't be able to get an iron into it. So I got to make sure that the blow dry is really good in order for me to be able to go in and refine the haircut. So now just using my hands, kind of moving it around, see how I like it. Making sure the finish is correct, seeing if it's laying the way that I want it to. I feel pretty happy with that, so now I'm going in with the refinement. There you can see kind of that length that's left through the bottom. So really just going in with the scissor and slide cutting just to remove some of that weight, kind of blend it into that crown area that's shorter. So pretty aggressively going in. Want to remove quite a bit of weight there. And again, I'm going to go back and do a line on the outside. So I'm just keeping all that in mind when I'm working through this way. Same thing, still slide cutting. Very visual work here. I think that's fun, the juxtaposition of visual with very technical. So here you can see I'm creating the outline, just laying the scissors flat against the skin and creating the design line that I want. Using the tips of the scissors just to kind of soften the line. So even though we cut off quite a bit there, you can still see the heaviness that sits. What that did is it just allowed me to have a little bit more to work with for the graphic outline. Using the trimmers just to clean up any neck hair. And then the tips of the scissors again on that outline just to kind of soften it a bit. You know, for the sake of video, we kind of speed it up, but you know, with the outline work, you take quite a bit of time, the refinement as well, to really make the haircut kind of pop for you. So now I'm going through and just kind of dusting the edges of those initial sections that I took, and then going through and point cutting. I don't want to change the overall look of the haircut. I just want to kind of decorate it a little bit. So just point cutting deep some, point cutting shallow, really changing the technique up, just giving me different textures, especially through the interior of the haircut that we wanted to be a little bit more kind of textured and fuzzy. So now I'm going to work into the fringe, so just combing the hair down, seeing exactly how I want it to lay. Cutting it from behind. What this does is it allows me to put tension on the hair and use the tips of the scissors in a really efficient way to kind of come across the shape of the head. It keeps the still blade on the forehead, so it eliminates me cutting her, but it allows me to work a little bit faster and also more cleanly. So coming in a little bit more aggressive with the tips of the scissors, not going too far into the hairline. Really just wanted to give it kind of a chewed off effect. On those length pieces through the perimeter, just elevating them up using a point cutting technique to kind of soften them out and piece them out a little bit more. All this is going to do is give it a little bit more texture and a little bit more movement through the perimeter, so it's not so strong through the side there. I'm using the Privé texture spray, just going through, moving the hair around, kind of lifting it, letting the texture spray do what it does. It's a very light hold, but it's also enough that you can kind of spray it in there and get your fingers in it and really piece it out. So just kind of expanding the shape, seeing what the haircut will do. So it's kind of a pixie, kind of a bob through the front. There's the finished result. So something very modern, very kind of punk rock. Very small, form-fitting to the head. She's pretty happy with it. Getting her hands in it and moving it around. I really like this look here with it tucked behind the ears too. Just gives it a different kind of feel. I hope you guys like it.